Minasan, konnichiwa. This is Kevin Nethercott, and I'm excited to be a part of Humans of Telecom.
Hey everyone, a very warm welcome to Humans of Telecom, the Unplugged podcast. This is your host Anurag Aggarwal, Chief Growth Officer at Globe Teleservices. For those tuning in for the first time, this is a podcast where we explore the fascinating stories and perspectives of the people who power our modern communication networks. In each episode, we'll deep dive into the lives and experiences of the engineers, innovators, and entrepreneurs who are shaping the future of telecom. We all know how telecom has become a lifeline for each and every one of us, and through our conversations here, we aim at uncovering the human side of this vital and dynamic field. In our past episodes, we've heard stories of triumphs and failures, explored the latest trends and innovations, and gained new insights into the people who make it all happen. So today's episode is with one such individual who has a very fascinating story of his own to share with all of us. After a long innings spanning across multiple companies in the CPaaS space, he has literally started an organization with that name itself, focusing on developing this ecosystem and taking it to the next level. Why don't I shut up at this point and let the man speak for himself? So please join me in welcoming Kevin Nethercott, Managing Partner at CPaaS Acceleration Alliance. Kevin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this journey. We'd love to hear more about you and from which part of the world are you joining this podcast today?
Thank you for the invitation. I am joining you from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Hi, Kevin. Welcome to the show. So, we have a gentleman here from Salt Lake City, Utah, but the introduction was in Japanese. So, what's that all about?
That's right. Yep, I am dialing in today from Salt Lake, but have spent a number of years living and working in Japan. It actually started when I was 19 years old, um, with a church mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they send you a letter. They could call you to anywhere in the world. And I opened that letter up and it said Japan. And my life has never been the same since. So at 19 years old, went and spent 2 years living in Japan in the Tokyo and north of Tokyo area. And based on that experience, learned the language, fell in love with the people, the culture, the food, and it has been a key point both personally and for my career ever since then.
And was the tryst with Japan limited to those 2 years, or had it been a much longer stint?
Yeah, so we came back from Japan at 21 years old, met my wife, and we got married pretty quickly. And we were still in school, and we thought, we don't have any kids. This might be our only chance to go have an adventure. And so the only student loan I ever took out was actually a student loan to pay for our tickets to fly to Japan. And so as newlyweds, we went over, we were there a little over 18 months. We both worked, taught English, and did some other things, and saved enough money to then finish school, came home. And then as soon as I graduated, we liked it so much that we actually went back again for another 3.5 years. And at this point, we had an 18-month-old toddler. And then while we were there, our second daughter was actually born in Japan as well. So have lived there 3 times for a total of almost 8 years, and then have started a number of companies. And some of those I've been there monthly. I don't know. I've probably been to Japan over 100 times since we lived there. So definitely a home away from home and a place that's close to my heart.
Not only close to your heart, I think close to your entire family's heart, I can see. And that's quite an interesting twist. I never expected, having met you, that you would have such a strong Asian connection.
That's right.
And Kevin, for you, how's it been like when you compare Japan and the US? Both are, I think, starkly different countries and cultures. How do you compare the two, and what's the best of each?
That's a great question. I think clearly very different. In fact, I tell my American friends that are wanting to have an international experience that they really should put Japan on the top of their list because it is so different. It's upside down, it's backwards, the food, everything is so different. However, It's probably the safest place on the planet, and so you can go have a safe experience. It's clean, the people are so nice, and the food is great. So for that reason, I always tell my friends that Japan's a great location to go and visit. I think if I were to compare them, there's definitely some big differences. The things that we like about Japan are the people, the food, but everything is precise. The trains, you could set your watch by the train system there. It's always on time. And so the people are as well. So everything's very organized. And so that part of it is really great. But I think sometimes because of that, you lose a little bit of the flexibility or the ability to kind of be yourself. And so I think that's one of the key parts of my American experience is the freedom to be who you are. There's fewer rules. So there's a lot more innovation, I think. I think what we found, even with some of the companies I've started, we would write our source code here in the US and it would be innovative and great. And then we'd have a Japanese partner that would then make it better, but I couldn't ever get the Japan side to maybe originate the code. So it's interesting how different people, different cultures, different countries have their different strong points and weak points. But I've had the advantage of enjoying both, and that balance has been great for me.
That's interesting. So I guess the originality of the Americas combined with the discipline of the Japanese, I think that's a lethal combination.
It really is if you do it right. In fact, that's how we did my first startup way back in '96. We were the first ever voice over IP company in Japan. And I would source technology from the United States, and then my Japan team would what we would call wafu, which is Japanese flavor. We'd put our Japanese wrapper around it and then take it to market there. And it really was a killer combination. We did really well back in the day by having that strategy.
Awesome. And beyond Japan and the US, have there been any other countries which have played a significant role in your life till now?
I would highlight two. I have traveled extensively, for work around the world throughout Europe and all throughout Asia. But there's two places based on what I was doing and maybe the time in my life that were really impactful for me. And the first would be Kenya. One of the startups that I was one of the founding team for was focused on education for university aged individuals. And part of our program was to work with businesses to have them sponsor projects so that the students could actually graduate with 2 years of resume experience. And so as we started this new school, we talked to the likes of IBM and GM and others where they needed more talent. And it was a unanimous Nairobi, Kenya. And so I'd never been to the continent before and went for the first time in, I think, the end of January. And by July, we actually had our first cohort of students there in Kenya. And having been out in the village, in the slums, in Nairobi, I had some really unique experiences working with the youth there, hearing their stories, their family stories, and the dedication and hard work that they put in to even be sometimes even alive, let alone have the opportunity to go to school. And so that was a really unique experience. It was very touching, humbling to see the impact that we could have. And little did they know they had a bigger impact on me. And so, I think Kenya clearly has an important spot in my heart. The other would be in this same vein from Kenya. We then went and took some of these same programs to India. And at the time, I didn't necessarily want to live in India, so we moved to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And so we spent almost a year living in Malaysia in the humidity and heat. But that was also a great experience. We actually took the family. My son was just starting high school, and so gave him an international experience. And with AirAsia, you can get anywhere very quickly and very cost effectively. out of KL, and so that was another great experience for our family of living abroad and experiencing different cultures that were super impactful and helpful in the growth and the journey of our family.
Awesome. So it's not only been limited to Asia and the Americas, there is a play of Africa also in the entire story. That's interesting. And if I ask you that amongst all these experiences, what have been some of your most memorable and impactful moments so far? What would they be?
Let's see. So from a professional angle, first of all, I had a really unique experience that got me into this industry that I think is really interesting. So I'd been living in Japan and had actually just taken a job in Silicon Valley. And I was on my way to the US from Japan, flying through LA, and there was this conference that they used to call CT Expo. And I attended one of the sessions by a company called Vocal Tech. They were out of Israel. And this was back in 96. And I believe it was the first time they ever publicly demonstrated their voice over IP product that they had. And it sounded like crap. However, there were like probably 50 of us in the room, and 47 of them walked out and said, "Ah, that sounds horrible. That's, what is this toy?" But there were like three of us, and I think we'd all lived overseas before, and we knew that it cost like $5 a minute to call home. And we were like,
Uh-huh.
it's free from point A to point B. This has a future. And so that was back in 96. And that triggered my first startup where I ended up quitting that job that had transferred me to Silicon Valley and then tied up with some Japanese partners. And we started a company called Skywave, which was the first ever voice over IP company in Japan. And so, I think that that has, been another key pathway for my life based on that one single hour in that session. My whole career path changed, my life changed, completely got into the startup side of, business and have been there ever since.
That's interesting, Kevin. So, as they say, that 1 hour that changed your life.
Right.
So, Kevin, let's shift gears a bit. We have the next section, which we call the human side. So, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, a little more on the personal side. So, while you told your professional journey, let's hear a bit more about Kevin. So, firstly, what does Kevin do to recharge himself? There's so much you mentioned out there. But if I ask you for one thing which you're very passionate about, what would that be?
Well, I'm super passionate about my family. Um, we're a very close family and we do a lot together. I think one of the things that we really enjoy doing is being outdoors. And so, from a refreshing perspective, motivation from that side, we spend a lot of time out kayaking and camping here in Utah. We're, right in the Rocky Mountains, and so we have a lot of beautiful surroundings to go and really recharge the battery from a nature perspective. And then, we like to play a game called pickleball. I don't know if all your listeners are familiar with that yet, but it's all the craze here in the States these days. And so, being with the family, enjoying outdoors has always been a great motivator. And then recently, I've gotten into gardening. We've actually bought a greenhouse and I guess it's from spending time in Southeast Asia. I have a banana tree in my greenhouse. And so I'm trying to grow bananas, mangoes, oranges, lemons, and limes, and avocados here in the Rocky Mountains where it snows. So it's a bit of an experiment still, but it's something that we're having a lot of fun with here just recently.
Cool. So, you're truly leading a balanced life, and hats off to you for doing that. And now we are going to play a couple of games, Kevin. So let's see how that goes. It's quite fun when I put up a couple of questions and hear what my guests have to say. So the first one is that I'm going to throw a couple of words towards you. And for each one, I'd like you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. So, as I always tell my guests, be human, be original, and say whatever spontaneously comes into your mind. Are you ready for that?
Bring it on. Let's do it.
Awesome. So the first one is our very community, Telecom.
Engagement. I think if you would have asked me a year or so ago, I probably would have said connectivity or connected. but I feel like communications has expanded to so many channels that allows us to really engage with our family, our friends, with brands, with companies. That engagement is has become a real key part of telecommunications.
Yep, I totally agree. The second one is motivation.
Relationships. Um, I think for me, what I really enjoy most is, and maybe it's because of all my travels and so forth, but I really enjoy meeting new people, experiencing new cultures. And so the ability to, that's what motivates me to get up and go to work every day. It's talking to people, understanding their problems, how can I help, that kind of things. That really does motivate me.
Cool. And I guess hence the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance, maybe that makes sense. That brings you onto board with so many people through this platform.
For sure.
The next one is an easier one, family.
Love. Um, I think that's where it really starts and ends within a family. I would share, though, I think one of the things that is important as part of that concept is staying away from contention. Often at home, at work, at play, we get in arguments or there's contention, and it's difficult for love to exist when there's contention. And so that's something that we continually work on around here. But clearly, um, you know, love around with the family is critical.
Very true. And the next one is a bit unusual, faith.
I'd answer love again, in the sense that if you think about what the teachings of the two great commandments, and one of those being love your neighbor. And so I think for me and my faith, loving my neighbor, and even if you don't have a faith or you have a different faith, if we can love our neighbor, the world will be a much better place. And so, when I think about faith, I think about love, and then having a much better community because of that.
Cool. And the last one would be where we are today, podcast.
Podcast. So I'd say driving or maybe flying, where
Uh-huh.
that's where I do all my podcast listening is when I'm in a vehicle or an airplane.
And interestingly, I've also had a number of listeners of the show come back to me and say that, hey, we were actually boarding a flight for the next conference or coming back from it, and we downloaded some of your episodes, and we are going to be listening to it in the flight. So I think, yeah, Humans of Telecom has also taken off into the air.
That's great. I just hope that they're not using as a replacement for melatonin.
you know I must confess, there are times when even I download my own episodes to do a quality check and then hear them on the flight. And yeah, there have been some experiences of dozing off. So what I think, I'm gonna say is that it has a calming effect on the listener's mind. So I'll take credit for that.
Absolutely, that works.
And Kevin, in your case, one more bonus word, since you literally have an organization with that name. So, what's the first thought, and what do you mean by when you say CPaaS?
Engagement. I think it's the very technology that allows us to connect. CPaaS stands for Communication Platform as a Service, but really what it does is it connects the telephone network to applications. And now, as I was mentioning earlier, there's all these channels available that we can communicate on. And so CPaaS is really what enables the reminder from the dentist, the alert from your bank account that you just got $1 million. Allows you to scream at your Uber driver because he's on the wrong corner. There's just so many great use cases for CPaaS that, from a consumer perspective, it doesn't really matter that CPaaS exists. Your life just gets easier and better because of it.
I think this is quite a fun and a very innovative way in which you put it. A number of people ask me also that explain what your industry is about. I think next time I'm gonna use a couple of pointers from yours on that. Hey guys, the next time when you get the lottery of $1 million and you get a text that's coming from CPaaS.
That's right. CPaaS has all these positive vibes about it.
Absolutely. And we play one more game, and I'll be very honest out here. It's an honest confession that I've yet never been able to win. My guests always get the better of me. So let's see what happens here. So I'm going to ask you to tell me three statements. Two of them have to be truths, and one of them has to be a lie. The expectation here is that all three are so exotic in nature that it befuddles me and I'm not able to pick out the one which is a lie. So, are you ready for that?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Wonderful. So, let's hear the three statements.
All right. So the first one is I was a cowboy for the summer in the mountains of Wyoming. The second one is I lived in Nairobi. And the third one was I played in the Little League World Series as a youth.
So, I think the first two, I would like to believe that they are the truths because I can somehow imagine you as a cowboy, given all that you mentioned about your tryst with nature. The second one, I think, was a anyway a giveaway, right? You already mentioned about working closely in Kenya, so I think that's also a truth. So I'll go with the third one. That the third one is a lie. So am I right this time?
Your streak is alive. No, so the lie was actually I never actually lived in Nairobi. Now if you ask my wife, she would probably care to differ. She would say that I lived in Nairobi, but I just stayed in hotels a lot that year. So I never technically lived there. But depending on who you ask, that you might have gotten that one right.
Well, I guess we'll allow you to win on a technicality then.
All right.
and and what's even more interesting is about the cowboy experience. So tell a bit more about that. How did that pan out?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Both sides of my family are kind of original pioneers to the Jackson Hole area. Jackson Hole is a very famous cowboy town in Wyoming. It's kind of the gateway city or gateway town to Yellowstone National Park near the Tetons. And it turns out that my grandfather was actually the foreman of the largest cattle ranch in the valley. And so from a young age, I think I started riding horses with him at the age of 4. And we would go on these cattle drives, just like you would see on a movie or on TV. And, we're up at 4 a.m. We're in our saddles before it's even light out, chasing cows. It's really hard work. And when you're younger, you just want to be with grandpa, and so it's fun. But as I got older, he actually would pay me, and I'd stay the summer and work for him on his ranch. And so that was actually a really impactful point in my life as well. You really learn how to work hard in that environment. You have to, or you just don't make it. And so my grandpa really help me learn those skills and kind of put that into my life and the way that I work now. I think a lot is based on that experience. Um, it also brought me really close to horses. I loved riding horses, and they were always my favorite animal until I spent time in Africa and Malaysia, where I had the opportunity to interact with elephants, and they're really cool too. So they've kind of become my most favorite animal now. But yeah, the days in Wyoming had a big impact on my life for sure.
And in fact, I think there are even places where you can adopt elephants, right? I think it's in Kenya or somewhere, and you can actually get to know about their progress. So, have you ever experienced one of those uh, experiences as well?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because I actually did that. The first time I was there, it's a way to donate um, to the nursery that takes care of the young elephants. And as you say, they send you a monthly update on how it's growing, what they're doing. And then what's really cool though is if you go back, you can actually get private time with the elephant that you adopt. And so since I was there so often, I had the opportunity to go and see quote unquote my elephant, a couple of different times in person. So that was a really fun and unique experience.
And I believe they also have things like the giraffe cafe and all in Kenya. It feels a little scary when I've heard that a giraffe actually pops his head inside through the window of your room. So I don't know how much is it exciting and how much is it scary. But yeah, you have some fascinating, unique experiences in Kenya.
For sure. Yep. And the cafe that you're talking about has a B&B that you can stay in that absolutely that's the case. And it's actually on my wife's bucket list to go and stay there. So she thinks it'll be fun, not scary, but I think you have to experience it in person to really know.
Absolutely. So, Kevin, as always, it's been such a fun conversation. To be honest, I didn't expect that we'll be getting into Asia and Africa. And, that's the interesting thing about this podcast. You have a perception of a person through only the work interactions. And then when you actually dive a little deeper and scratch below the surface, there is so much more and so many interesting and diverse stories and tales to hear about. So, as always, it's been an interesting experience to have you on board. And we are now on to our final section where we ask two questions. The first one is that uh, if somebody wants to meet you and hear more about your stories with grandpa as a cowboy, or hear about your trysts with elephants and horses, which are some of the conferences which you're attending in the coming months, or something which the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance might be doing?
Yeah, so I'll actually be back in the DC area. I think you'll be there next week as well at ITW. And looking forward to getting together with our industry friends and peers and colleagues. So we'll have an opportunity there. And then the next one, actually, I think will be in September when the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance is hosting what I believe is the first ever exclusive kind of CPaaS conference. We're calling it the CPaaS Acceleration Summit. It'll be in Amsterdam, September 18th through the 20th. And so we're excited to host all of the industry insiders from all over the world to come and spend 2 days together and network, have some fun, but then also I think more than just an hour in somebody else's show, we could actually get into some of the nitty gritty details that are important for our industry. So it'd be great to host whoever's interested to come and join us in Amsterdam in September.
Awesome. So I wish you all the very best for that summit. And I do hope that it's a success. I'm sure it will be. And that'll allow us to have many more such summits in the coming months. In fact, do drop in the comments when this podcast is posted. Do mention some more details about the summit so that our listeners can think about being a part of that summit. All right, and we are on to our final question, what we call the signature question. So, what does being human mean to you? What sort of a human being would you want the world to remember you as?
Yeah, that is a human question. It's a very deep question. Um, I think, going back to a couple of things I said earlier, being a good friend is really important to me. That's, again, love your neighbor kind of thing. But I think also, particularly given my kind of global experience working with different countries and cultures around the world, um, you really do get to know the human side of people. I refer to this as global, um, where I have a global perspective based on, work or world or politics or whatever, but really a local connection where you're working and engaging with individuals, within their culture. And so I always try and keep that global approach of understanding the big picture, but from a relationship standpoint, really working with the individual. And so if I were known as a global citizen and your best friend, that would that would mean a lot to me if that's where my journey ends up taking me.
That's a wonderful thought to end this conversation on, Kevin. And I'm sure that through initiatives such as your Acceleration Alliance, there will be many friends that you pick up on your way in this journey. And I too look forward to being one of them.
Well, I appreciate that. I think with what we're doing with the alliance, really what we're doing is building community. And so the
Uh-huh.
more the merrier. The more we have, the more we can learn from each other, engage, and ultimately have a lot of fun together as well.
I'm sure about that, Kevin. So, on that note, on behalf of Humans of Telecom, thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation. As I said, much more than what meets the eye. And I do look forward to seeing you soon.
We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much, Kevin. And to all our wonderful listeners here, thanks a lot for tuning into the show. We hope that this episode gave you a good glimpse of the human side of this truly global citizen, Kevin. From living in the land of the rising sun, Japan, to being a cowboy in the ranches in the US, to adopting elephants in Kenya, this man has been there and done that. It seems too good to be true. As always, do stay tuned in because we shall soon be releasing yet another episode and another compelling story from the telecom space shortly. And do follow the podcast on your preferred streaming channel. On behalf of Humans of Telecom, this is your host Anurag Aggarwal signing off for now. Take care.